Welcome back to the Intentional Intern podcast. I missed you guys so much, and now that season 2 is finally here, we are back. And we're not just back, we're back with an hour-long episode to start, and even after this episode, trust, we are just getting started. Get ready for more real talk, connective conversations, and shared stories that showcase students' amazing passion and potential. This week's guest that'll kick it off is Lauryn Taylor, a junior pursuing a bachelor's degree in advertising and public relations and public policy at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Her passion lies in crafting impactful and engaging content, and her on-campus ambassador presence and internship experiences definitely show that. From being a campus ambassador with Pentel, Bumble, Kendra Scott, and more, the resume is long. Beyond building others' brands, Lauryn's building her own. She founded Better Blueprint Consulting, which provides comprehensive business consulting focusing on social media strategy and brand engagement. She also runs a bi-weekly LinkedIn newsletter called the Better Blueprint blog, which is all about navigating transitions and creating a blueprint for success in college, career, and change. Throughout the episode, Lauryn and I talk about your proximity to purpose, her passion for personal and professional brands, the society of social media, and a plethora of early career and college advice. What would the podcast be without that, to be honest? For those who want to connect with Lauryn, her LinkedIn will be linked below. Check out her consulting company, Better Blueprint Consulting, at betterblueprintconsulting.com. With that, let's kick off season 2. Hi, Lauryn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited that we're in person. Love the vibes already.
Yes, I'm so glad we both ended up in Atlanta during the same time and got to come together and do this.
Yes, it was meant to be. Really good energy, and I'm super excited for you to tell everyone in the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Lauryn, and I'm going into my 3rd year at UNC Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels. I'm studying advertising and public relations with another major in public policy. I love to travel. I love to hang out with my friends. I love to shop. But I'd say the thing that really is driving me right now is getting into kind of the marketing and personal branding space and making a name, not just for myself, but for others, my community, and the different companies I kind of choose to work with. So,
yeah, that was such a good introduction. Okay, I did not know that your mascot for your school was Tar Heels. Where does that come from?
So they actually wanted to change it because UNC Chapel Hill is actually a very, very old school and has very kind of dark historical roots. So a Tar Heel is actually I believe, I may have this partially wrong, but I believe it was when Confederate soldiers were marching through the South and up to the North, they would step on tar in the South. And that's where the Tar Heel comes from. Don't ask me what troop group that was after, because it was obviously the Confederates or Union soldiers. Yeah. I don't really know who, but I know people have wanted us to go by just heels and ignore the tar part, because obviously tar has such a dark history within slavery and stuff. But alumni network long, it's an old school,
You rep it well. It's a good explanation. I appreciate you saying that and going a little bit more into just not the tar of stuff, but getting your heels into things and finding your roots and your grounds. How did you end up choosing your majors? I mean, public policy and then public relations. The only thing they have in common to me when I think about it is the word public, but what does that mean for you? How did you find those?
Yeah, so I actually came into college pre-med, which is crazy. So actually all through high school, my dream programs were to do a BSMD program, which is where you get your bachelor's of science and your medical degree from the same school, typically in a shortened period of time. So I had applied to East Carolina's BSMD program. I had applied to Howard's BSMD program, and I was dead set on being a doctor. My senior year, I did a year-long internship. It was 15 hours a week, which is a lot for high school when you're still in school. working at like an assisted living home. I was like job shadowing CNAs, PTs, OTs, and also of course like doctors. And I thought for a really, really long time, like that was the thing that was gonna like fulfill all of my little gooey insides. And it just is not. I cannot like recommend enough. Like once you get to college, like you have to step away from what you thought your dreams were just for a semester, just so you can see what else is out there. Because in high school, at least like where I went to high school, they really only talk about law, engineering, comp sci, medicine, and business. Um, and like maybe when you're in middle school, you do like advanced reading or advanced science, and like you kind of just get stuck on a trek. And like college is your first time to get off that path and see if that's the path you really belong on. So, like my freshman year, first semester, I took this class, Medicine, Literature, and Culture, which was like an English class. And I literally just realized like I did find medicine interesting and I did find people interesting, but not in the way of I want to take care of people for the rest of my life. I actually found like that aspect of it to be a little exhausting, especially because of how like they normalize putting other people over yourself in medicine and putting like even other people over your family in medicine. And I started to realize like through that class there would be like doctors who would come in who had like switched over to research or public health leadership or even like healthcare consulting, and they all said like they just felt like medicine wasn't even fulfilling them the ways that they thought it would. And as I like started to listen to them, I was like, oh my gosh, like they're literally me. Like they like did all of this, like some of them have gone to great fantastic medical schools, like lived the pre-med dream, and like when they finally got there it still wasn't for them. And I knew like I didn't want that type of dissatisfaction in my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally valid. And to understand that even at a younger age, instead of saying, like, let me push through and go through it when I don't have to, that is so real. I mean, I feel like a lot of people would kill to have that opportunity of to see someone who's been through where they want to go and then really evaluate, is this where I want to be? And it seems like with the mindset and the track that you had, it was really easy for you to kind of find that discernment for yourself of, oh, this is not what I want to do. And this is not where I want to be. And that's fine for other people who do want to be there, who enjoy that and having that realm of medicine and how it fulfills them and that passion, but understanding that luckily without having to go through a whole degree, I think is something like a blessing in disguise almost.
And I think people also forget like how close healthcare is to you. Like, I mean, by the time you're a physician or a nurse or a physical therapist, like any of those things, like you've probably seen someone pass away from a healthcare issue. You've probably seen someone go through a really hard time with a healthcare issue. And medicine is one of those things where its proximity to you is so tight. Like you're talking like you've been in school for like 8 to 12 years studying this thing. You're working at least 40 hours a week. Like, I mean, yes, there are, part-time gigs, but you're working hours for the vast majority of healthcare positions. And you just start to realize like I didn't like how close it was to me. Like, I would have never wanted to be like a doctor and then like my parents are getting old and they're suffering from dementia. So I'm coming home and doing my job all over again. Like, that was just something I realized I never wanted. Like, the proximity was just too close. And I felt like, as like a Black woman, like, if you're in medicine, sometimes I feel like you're tasked with all these extra things, like getting kids into, like getting other Black girls into medicine, making sure you're advocating for all your Black patients, whether or not they're even your actual patient. Like, you just, even though sometimes the intent is good, like I feel like you become almost a poster child for several other causes that are outside your job. And although, of course, like mentorship, advocacy is all great, like not everyone wants to do that. And not everyone like feels like they can take care of themselves and do all of those things.
Yeah. And there's power in that. And just knowing for yourself and having that capacity. I don't have the capacity for that. For me, even in hearing you talk, oh, I knew in my head, I'm not strong enough for that. Like, I'm not strong enough for that. And that's okay because there are other people that will be. But also in trying to push myself to kind of overcompensate and feel like I have the capacity for that will ultimately destroy me, probably at the end of the day, if I know this is something that I can't do and I can't consider. And I love that you are open with that and talking about that dynamic of proximity within a career and what really that means, and how really, if this is unfulfilling, this will not work for you in terms of how much you're going to have to overcompensate and overperform, especially in the dynamics of being intersectional and being a Black woman and having to advocate for others on top of the work that you're doing to save others. I think that's a really good point. And I think that is a really, really crucial key thing that people should think about when considering their careers or in starting out. And so, from that lens of feeling this is something that you can do, how did public policy and public relations come into that, and your proximity and closeness with those things?
Yeah, and I will say, to like touch on that, like there was this one Black doctor who was like a mentor of mine. I swear she had like 30 mentees, and she was like maybe 5 years like post residency. And like I would just talk to her sometimes, and she was like, obviously super helpful woman, always great, always had my back. But like she had 30 mentees. She was sitting on like the DEI board of her hospital. She was doing like helping like HR lead like anti-racist campaigns and education within like not only like the broader lens of public health, but like within her own troops, like internally. And I just realized like like I realized like how often like your education and like your race coming together then becomes like your greatest burden. Like I felt like she wasn't even getting to like peak in her career because she was doing all these like other side things, and I never even knew like if she was truly into those things, but like she just kind of, it was just like what she was given and like expected to do. And I always felt like it was super unfair, and she did a great job with it. But like some physicians, like you know, like a stereotypical surgeon, like they like to cut, like they like to be in the OR, they like to do the hands-on stuff. They may not love the DEI, the awareness, the mentorship. Like that's not everybody's thing. And I just realized like I think sometimes she felt like she couldn't really just be a doctor. Like she had to take on these like side tasks. And
Yeah.
it was really interesting, and like just how she would speak about it was very interesting, and it really did like let me know that maybe I should look in other places.
Yeah.
So then how did I get to this major? Oh my gosh, I actually used to keep a list of like all of the majors I went through in undergrad, which like I would go. So like my thing is like in undergrad, it's okay if you don't actually know what you want to do, but if you don't, you just need to fake something until someone tells you or something tells you that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So like for me, once I dropped pre-med, I was like, maybe I'll like public health. So I was never sure about it, but I was gonna lie. Like I was gonna be like on LinkedIn, yep, public health major, yep, volunteering at, you know, the little like North Carolina public health event, yep, doing the networking activities, because you just have to go 100% until someone tells you to put your energy somewhere else. So for a time being, I was interested in being like a health policy and management major. I started working in marketing at the hospital. I was sitting on a policy review board. Like I was like, yep, this is the thing. And then I figured out it wasn't my thing. So then I switched to econ and public policy. Took econ 101. I started going to like the consulting clubs. I started doing like the behavioral and technical interview prep. Like I was like, oh, okay, this is like the thing now. Like I'm gonna go for it 100%. Eventually figured out like econ's not my thing. So then I kept public policy because that was something I genuinely enjoyed, not only the classes, but the extracurriculars and work opportunities that came from it. And I finally got to add PR, which took 2 years to get to. But the thing is, sometimes I do feel like we tend to hide parts of ourselves that we don't view as like profitable. And so
Speak on it.
when I was in high school, my senior year, I did social media management for a franchise that had just opened up. And I literally had like cold messaged the owner on Facebook and was just like, hey, like, I see you're opening like a smoothie shop. I know like there's a lot of people you need to open this. Like, would you want someone to help you run social media? Like, I like social media. I've received like some PR packages from companies and made content. Like, I would love to help you. And he was like, okay, sure. And like, that was my first like kind of big girl social media job. And then even when I worked at like the assisted living home my like whole senior year, I would help with like the budget reports. I would help with the finance reports. I would help make like the graphics for our events. I would help email all of like the people living there, like their kids, and send them update emails. And although I was like still like cosplaying, I want to be a doctor, like let me go help these people do like their PT exercises, I always had different things about that job that I liked way more than what I was there for. And so I guess like eventually like I finally just accepted like, oh, okay, I'm not meant to be like a bachelor's of science girly. Like I'm meant to be a bachelor's of arts girly, and that's okay. And like I just realized sometimes, and this isn't for everybody, but I know for me, how I was like very mediocre at STEM. Like my best of the best in STEM was still mediocre on the broader scale of like grades, GPA, standardized tests. Like that's just simply how it is. But my mediocreness in like a humanities field is pretty darn good. And sometimes I just feel like people, like you don't have to work against yourself. Like if you're good at something that isn't as glamorized, as cool as what people feel is high earning, that's okay to like still pursue it. Like I felt like when the whole time like I was pre-med and I was in these STEM classes and you're taking like chem with like 400 people and you're like competing for this one research lab position that you don't care about, like I genuinely felt like I was just like not being myself. Like I was just working so hard at something that wasn't even a natural fit for me. And that's not to say when things are hard you should always give up, but sometimes it's okay to like go with what's naturally best for you. You don't have to work hard at everything. And like I feel like especially like in the undergrad level, like you should be able to enjoy the things you're studying.
Yeah, and that's a word. Like for me, I think it's super interesting being in HR because that's not glamorized at all. And that wasn't a field that I thought that I was going to work in. That wasn't a field that I thought that I was going to be in because I started out, well, not knowing anything at all. So I just started out just kind of following my degree and following my career and then hoping that something would fall into my lap as I continued to take classes. And something did, luckily, of just thinking, oh, yeah, I could be good at this. But HR is something that is never heard about, at least within my career and my college experience. HR was probably one of those things. If you had to rank a list of majors, it wouldn't even be on the list. Like it was one of those things that I had to learn about, and I just happened to learn about through other people. And it's not, to a lot of people, HR is very boring. HR is also the police. HR is also a lot of different things. But for the unique passions and perspectives that I have on HR and the HR that I do, it's very fulfilling for me in a lot of different levels. So I may not be the richest person in the world. It may not be something that is deemed as the most wealthy and glamorous thing, but I'm rich in other things. I'm rich in knowledge. I'm rich in people experience. I'm rich in connectivity. Those are things that are important to me that in some way they fill up and invest in myself versus, monetarily in that way. I mean, it does because it's still a job, but at the end of the day, it's fulfilling me dual fold. And I think as you're talking about your career and as you're talking about like where you got to where you are now and how you had to look at other things before that, it sounds like you have a really good idea and wrap about like what you do and where you are now with public policy and PR and marketing.
I do, and I think it definitely took like time. Like but I just knew like I had always been interested in like marketing and ad PR. I just never thought it was like what people would call like a successful career. So I never knew or thought to pursue that. And like I think, and people like, I feel like this is one of the number one things like college students complain about, but like those gen eds, like having to take those classes like not related to your major. But the whole purpose of those is so that you can see other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like honestly, if I hadn't had to take gen eds, I probably would still be struggling in chemistry right now, because the only reason I was in the medicine, literature, and culture class was because I had to take an English class. And then the only reason I took a health communications class is because I had to take a comms class. And the only reason I took a history class is because I had to take a history class. And like, I think people forget that like colleges have been around for a really long time. And although like every college, every institution has its problems and has its issues. Gen eds are truly meant to like round you out as a person, because it's not good to only take one subject. It's not good. Like, I know you can become quote unquote experts in subjects, but it is still very good to round out your brain and round out yourself with other subjects.
Yeah, and from that perspective, gen eds are so valuable, but also those end of the year like seminar classes, like those senior seminar or those applied classes, that is how I found out about HR for me, because it was a class that was designed around, okay, you're about to get this degree and you may not know like every little thing that's with it, contrary to that TikTok sound where it says otherwise. But that's where my teacher laid out, here are all of your options. Either you have two mainly. One, you go to grad school and you decide to do something with that that's majored in your degree and continue that to a deeper level. Or two, you go into the real world. And then with the real world, you have like 75 other options. And there were things that I didn't even know, like if you had an anthropology degree, that you could even do things that were so unique that I was like, what? I didn't even know I had a connection to this, like of doing tourism or being in product marketing or being in like project management or doing all these unique ideals because of all of the little subsets of things that we had done, how you can utilize those skills and take them to the next level. And if it wasn't for that class, I would have never decided to do grad school. It was in the middle of her class where she was asking for an assignment and it was due like literally in 24 hours. And she was like, if only you're thinking about grad school, do this. Every other student, you don't have to do this. So I was like, okay, bet. I have a free week where I don't have anything to do. But the more that I got into the content that we were reading and I just decided to take a little look at it, I was like, oh, maybe this is something that I would be interested in because I could do it from a different lens. It's not like when I understood how master's programs and grad programs worked, first of all, that was the first thing that showed me that I could do something different. But literally it was within like, I maybe had like 2 hours to submit that assignment. After I was like, let me just take a look at all the extra work that other people had to do, not knowing that I was about to scramble, get into a program, and that it would end up putting me where I am now, of being somewhat in the real world with my experience, but also being able to learn and have the business acumen because of the direct degree that I'm taking to pursue other stuff on top of that.
And this is something that I also feel like is not talked about a lot, but sometimes in college, in like your college bubble, you do get into a kind of echo chamber. Like I remember like my very early like college friend groups, pretty much everyone was like pre-med, pre-law, pre-PhD, pre-something. And that echo chamber, sometimes when I would talk about like being a humanities major or doing something that was viewed just as not as prestigious, they were like, oh my gosh, like,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, but like it was definitely not cool.
Right. It was like the good for you. That's great.
And when I actually started to like go to career services events, go to networking events and meet like alumni, you actually realize like how many alumni from your school are working jobs that you've never heard of, but are making more money than you'll probably ever make in your entire life. And it was really humbling. Like I'd say like one of the guys like I met like at an alumni event, I actually like work for his company now, but all through college, like he used to scoop ice cream at Ben and Jerry's. Like that was his off-campus job. So like he would always scoop ice cream, and we were on like a pretty prestigious like full ride scholarship in undergrad. So I know like a lot of kids were doing more like elite internships during the school year, volunteering, just using their time differently than he was. And he kept scooping. He just kept scooping, and eventually he became like kind of like a shift lead. Then he became like a manager. Then he started really working his way up this individual franchise's like pyramid of leadership. And 2 days before he graduated UNC, he actually bought the franchise and became like Ben and Jerry's, like at that time, youngest franchisee owner. He was scooping ice cream for 3 years. And people were probably laughing at him as he was putting on his little apron and serving them and their parents over Parents Weekend. But now, fast forward, maybe like it's been 15, 20 years since he graduated. Him and two of his friends own 25 Ben and Jerry's. he is making more money probably than a lot of people with career names such as lawyer, such as doctor. And not only is he making money and supporting his family and supporting his kids, he's bringing in his friends, people who supported him from day one, to work us alongside him. He's bringing in tons of Black employees. It's a pretty much majority Black company, majority POC employees. He's also doing all this like nonprofit work that people say you can't make money from, but now he's made enough money selling ice cream that like he can afford to donate ice cream to a nonprofit having like a little outdoor carnival event. And it's just like really talking to him when he used to talk about like, yeah, sometimes I did feel like maybe people thought it was a little weird that I was working at an ice cream shop, like I'm on a full ride, like why would I need to take a gig like that? And he was just like, I don't even know if I can say I knew it at the time, but just like everything has its purpose. And he's probably, obviously you can never be in people's brains, but I'd argue he's one of the more happy like working professional adults I know, just because he stuck to something that I feel like a lot of people probably couldn't have laid out for him. And now like he doesn't hold that title of like youngest Ben & Jerry's like franchisee owner. And you know why he doesn't hold that title? It's because he built another kid up and they went and did the same thing and bought it at an even younger age than when he bought it. And he's just gotten to contribute so much back to communities, back to people. And he's not a doctor, lawyer, or CEO of Facebook. That's not what's happening. He, as far as I know, has not gone back to grad school. He, had a math major in undergrad, which, people probably rank, upper mid-level in terms of like how we feel about undergrad majors, definitely higher than ad PR, but still not one of those, oh my gosh, degrees, you're going to be filthy rich. And he's just really like created this life and this career for not only him, but for his family and for like a broader community. And that's when I really started to figure out like, not only that there's 1,000 ways to make money and there's 1,000 ways to be happy and make money, but also that a lot of people are quite frankly wrong. And a lot of people don't, when they're giving you advice, although it may be coming from a good place and it may have good intent, people don't know everything. And that was one thing, like growing up, my dad always used to tell me like, don't take advice from people whose like positions you wouldn't want to be in. And like, of course, like, that's not to be meant to be like offensive or rude, but genuinely, if your other 20-year-old friend is telling you your major is stupid, look at what they're doing. Is that something you'd want to do? And if it's not, you probably don't need to take their advice as God's will. It's just how it is. And like, you really have to learn to be like independent and be able to like think for yourself.
And even with that word of talking about, if this is someone or something like that you would not want to be in their position, regardless of what that is, I don't want people to think of that one-dimensionally, right? So not even just from a career standpoint, that goes from a mental standpoint, a spiritual standpoint, an emotional standpoint. If we're talking about something and we're talking about what we want to do and how something might make us feel, like, I'm not going to say if someone is over there crying about something, like if they just dropped a Happy Meal or something and they're so sad, for me to be like, because of the state I'm in, oh, just go get a new one, and just be, not really discerning of their feelings and not being considerate in that way, but understanding the position that they're in. So from that standpoint of looking, I know I wouldn't want to be in their position, but also within the position that I'm in, I don't want to make it worse. Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't have to be the person to take, what you're going through and embody that and try to assist where I can. But at the same time, I don't have to be the person that makes you feel worse about what position you're in. And that goes for anybody. So if someone were to say, hey, your major sucks, that's great. I'm glad you feel that way, I guess, to some degree. But at the same time, I'm not going to wish ill will on you either, because of how prestigious your degree might be deemed or things like that. And what aspect that could look like from another perspective, because everybody has their points of what they think is right and wrong. Personally, to me, I think the person who developed math, I want to go in a time machine and we could duke it out because I don't like math and what it's done for me, and how I've always been told to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared for everything that I do in life. And I've never encountered the formula since I graduated. But, everything is so perspective based. Everything is so subjective. And so from that point of, some people really can be wrong. And it's not like this is the one thing of like, sometimes people aren't trying to be wrong, but it really is it's wrong for you. And that's the thing. That's what they're not getting. And that may be something that they may not get just because that's something that was right for them. And you can't, in that way, you can't let people dictate your story from something that they did that went well and it went right for them, but it's wrong for you. It may be the right message and it may be the right messenger. You're just shooting for the wrong destination. Like, the place that you're trying to deliver the message cannot be received whatsoever.
That was definitely something that, like, I feel like I always used to ask, like, before I would do a decision. I would ask my mom, I'd ask my dad, I'd ask my sister, I'd ask my friends, I'd ask my teacher, I'd ask my mentor. Sometimes you don't need to ask that many people. And again, I always assumed, like, good intent from 99.5% of people. But there's just some things that, like, you can't really receive advice on. Like, you have to be able to be, like, a grown-up and say, does this align with my personal values? Does this align with my future career goal values? Does this align with does this have the support I need right now to do this thing? And that's how you make a decision. And a lot of those questions can't be answered from other people.
And I think that starts with the goals and the drive that you have now. So talking about marketing and talking about PR and public relations and public policy, what do your goals look like now? Like, what are some of the things that you're passionate about in those spaces?
So I'd say, like, the thing that I think about most is building, like, the brands of others. Just because, and as many people as I've received probably terrible advice from, I've received twice as much good advice from people. And I realized that, like, everyone does really have, like, a unique voice. And a lot of people, their voice is actually really powerful, but they have no idea how to brand it, package it, and put it on sale. And I'd say, like, one of my number one things is to, like, help people build their personal brands. Now, I'm not sure I'd want to take that in, like, a full-time role style, but, like, right now, like, one of my friends, like Christopher Everett, he just got into Duke Law School, and he has a lot of, like, really good things to say to, like, pre-law students. Like, he didn't have the top 5% LSAT score, had a good GPA, was not a 4.0, did good extracurriculars, did amazing in the extracurricular category. But of course, like, there's always going to be someone better. But he is just this way of, like, not only framing himself, but framing situations and other people that I think is really special. And it's really beyond, like, his extracurricular GPA, LSAT standardized test score accomplishments. So it's been really exciting because I've been helping him, like, produce, like, TikTok content about, like, pre-law admissions. And I just feel like obviously I know he's going to be, like, a great lawyer, but sometimes I'm like, quit and be a motivational speaker. But, like, that's, like, someone whose brand that I really am invested in developing, just because I feel like he has so much to say. And, he didn't study at PR, like, he didn't study comms, like, that's not maybe his specialty, but I'm really glad that I can use, like, some of the educational and career things that I've learned so far just to help him build it out. Like, we were just talking yesterday, and maybe, like, over the last 4 weeks, he's grown in almost 500 followers on TikTok. And people are, like, genuinely so excited to hear from them. They're like, oh my gosh, like, what did you write your essays about? How did you talk about this? How do you feel like your lower LSAT score held you back? Is mine going to hold me back? And he just has this way of, like, making people feel okay with, like, this pretty grueling, like, law school admissions process that's coming towards them. And I think, like, working with, like, people like that has really, like, motivated me to want to work with other creators, other people with stories, other people with passion, and get them to a place where obviously they're sharing it, but hopefully eventually, like, they can also make some money off sharing it.
For all the students or early career talent interested in PR like Lauryn, I encourage you to check out the PR Habitat, a new digital community created for young professionals in the PR industry by young professionals. This group is designed to help aspiring and emerging PR professionals grow by providing valuable career resources, facilitating connections, and highlighting the work of up-and-coming talent. The PR Habitat also tackles the important mission of filling the knowledge gap between the academia taught about PR and the PR industry, aiming to boost representation within the field by preparing the next generation of PR leaders. If you're looking for a space to learn, connect, and advance your PR career, follow the PR Habitat on Instagram and LinkedIn and join the community today. For more information on PR from a campus ambassador lens, check out WayUp's virtual panel discussion titled Exploring the Benefits of Being a Campus Ambassador on October 1st. Hear from Lauren and other students on what it's like to balance being a student and a campus ambassador. The panel is from 5 to 6 p.m. EST, and I'll put the registration link down below. Your friend has a natural talent. Like how you were saying, sometimes there's some things that education can't teach you because some people just have a really good talent. And not to say that you could be taught that, it just would take automatically longer than a person who naturally just has that essence, who naturally can just talk. And sometimes people really just do need the platform. I feel like there are a lot of people out there that can bring a lot to the table. They just don't know how to bring it to the table. And like you were saying, knowing how to package it and putting it on sale. And so I wonder, how does that perspective go for you when it comes to your personal brand? Do you follow that same advice that you're giving to the people that you help? What does your personal brand journey look like?
So I think for like a really long time, like I thought I wanted to be like one of like the fashion beauty girlies, which I don't really like doing makeup. I can't do my hair, and I'm not the most fashionable person, if I'm being honest. Like my best fits have been selected by other people. Best prom dresses my mom found. Like it's not my thing, but I always thought like, you know, in that era of like social media, you're talking like 2020, 2021, like people like a lot of the like very prominent figures we think of weren't really doing anything but being like lifestyle creators, and it worked very well for them because they loved creating lifestyle content. I never did. So like I kind of started to get more into like LinkedIn, even just like posting more on it, like my own personal accomplishments. But then I started to realize like there's this whole niche in like career girly, education girly, like that. There's so many people who are like day in the life with me as a doctor, day in the life as a medical student, day in the life as a brand talent manager, day in the life working for Live Nation. Like there's so many people who like their sole account like is their career. And I started to get really interested in that just because I felt like I had experienced like a lot of different jobs at like 20. Like I'd gotten to work for Bumble as like a brand ambassador. I'd gotten to work for Kodiak Cakes as an event coordinator. I'd gotten to work at like Quench Juice Cafe, which is where I first did like social media management. I got to be like a policy analysis person at a nonprofit in Memphis. And like over time, I'd accumulated so many different experiences in a short time that I was able to like talk about not only actually doing them, but also like how I got them, how I cold emailed, how I stumbled upon it, how I convinced people to let me do things that like sometimes I had no business doing. And I started to realize like I was never probably going to be like the girly who was like talking about like her makeup routine. You know, my friends mostly do my makeup, but I could maybe be the girly who talks about like building your resume or what platforms I use to find freelance jobs or how I organize my like schedule so that I can do like a full-time internship. I can take a class and I can do another part-time gig and like make it all work and still be able to go to the Bryson Tiller concert.
Yeah, I feel like that's where we both live almost. I can't even lie. For those, like my Instagram, it has not had a single picture on it since 2023 of last year. And I don't see that changing anytime soon just because, like, I'm not that person. I like observing other people. I like seeing what everybody else is up to. But in terms of my own journey and wanting to, hey, check out my fit, unless it's corporate fits, we're really not going to get anywhere because that's just how I'm dressing every day. And that's what I'm going to do. But that's also where my passion lies of some things are not a job when you're having fun, or they are not as easily portrayed as a job. So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to do the work that I love. Or if it's in my personal time, like now, even with the podcast, I'm doing something that I enjoy. I like being a connector. I like being an advocate for people. I like being able to put people up, not necessarily on a pedestal, but I like to put people where they belong, which is somewhere else, probably a lot higher than they think they might be, just because they haven't had someone tell them, hey, I recognize you have potential. And I think that's something that everybody needs to hear at some point. And people really don't understand how one word or one action, one connection, one support can really like skyrocket you to things that you thought you would have never done. For me, it's like I'm more comfortable shooting my shot now at people to come on the podcast, to start looking at how I can do brand partnerships within the podcast with corporate companies and be able to holistically change how early career is viewed and how early career talent is viewed. And that is something, if you asked me a year ago, would I be doing? The answer was absolutely not. But because I was told that I had potential for something I had no business doing, for something I was like, oh, let me just try, because the worst that anybody can say no, it can get you miles and miles further into something that you thought you'd never be doing. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing now, I thought I would never be doing. A lot of the stuff that I thought that was not worth my time doing, I'm now doing. And not because I deemed it as lesser than me. It's just because I didn't think I'd be doing anything with it. Like, it just wasn't something that I saw within the career path that I had designated for myself. This is something that I'm going to come across. Nonetheless, every single experience that you have is valuable. Whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, you are going to use a lot of that in figuring out how you're going to designate your future moving forward. So for you, from all of your different majors down to being like, hey, let me just shoot my shot. Do you need someone for this? Do you think you would be down for this? And the networking that you do, I think you've placed yourself pretty well in a position to take on anything that you can put your mind to, like, genuinely, because of the way that you operate and because of the perspective that you have. That's just, okay, well, I think I might like this. Let me go try this. I also want to try that. I don't have to just be good at one thing. I can win in multiple areas. I don't have to just win for myself. I can win for others. And I think that's such a unique perspective and mindset to have when you are doing a job that you have to do for yourself, but you're also doing it for others. And I think that's something super unique to marketing in that way, especially in the type of stuff that you do. A lot of the stuff you're applying to yourself, it applies outward.
It does, but I will say, like, one of the things I really struggled with, like, before I, like, started making my little LinkedIn newsletter, or, like, I, like, probably, like, in the fall semester of my sophomore year, like, UNC Career Services had reached out to me to do, like, a video with them on, like, doing freelance work as a college student. And one of the things, like, I did always feel like I really struggled with was, like, as a woman, like, career being such a big part of my quote unquote, like, personality. Just because sometimes I did feel like, I don't want to say like less than, but I felt almost like very detached from womanhood, because I wasn't talking about how my makeup looked, what outfits I was wearing, like, and like, although womanhood isn't like defined by those things, that is like traditionally what a lot of female creators like focus on. And particularly a lot of Black female creators, like, there is kind of this weird stigma, pressure to do like how I lay my edges, how I do my acrylic nails. And although there's nothing wrong with that type of content at all, and some people are very successful at it, like, when you kind of step outside that niche, you kind of feel like the world is like, what are you doing? Like, get back to those beauty tutorials. And that was one thing I always did feel like a little bit weird about, just because like I had done work with this company on Campus Nation, which basically host like different brand ambassador programs. So I did a program with them with the MBA Student League Pass. I did some focus groups with them with NARS, and I had done like a few other programs, and they had reached out. Like, I told them I had really enjoyed my time, and like if they ever wanted like help with like content on their pages, like, to let me know, because I genuinely thought like very cool company, very cool people. And they were like, oh my gosh, like, we would actually love to have you like run an ad on your like personal page, just saying like, hey guys, this is on Campus Nation, this is where I get like all my like brand ambassador program marketing tips from, like, check it out. And like I did it, it was great, but I did almost feel a little weird because it was like, this isn't about like beauty. This isn't about fashion. This isn't about things that are traditionally marked as like very feminine. This is about like, this is how you get to the money. This is how you work with companies. This is how you build your resume. And sometimes I did feel like, I guess the word is just awkward with like that not being like my central focus. Like my, like, although like I would be blessed with any brand deals, like my dream brand deal isn't necessarily with like a Fenty Beauty or a Rare Beauty. It's with like a Canva or a Notion. Like I feel like I have very different, like, I have a very different outlook on like what my personal brand is and like who I want to work with. Like when I'm sitting dreaming up like collabs, it's like, oh my gosh, like what if Apple sponsored me and I got to show everybody my Apple calendar? Like that's like what I think of. And like sometimes I did feel a little bit odd about that because I was like, why am I not like into this other stuff? Why am I not good at this other stuff? And like, why doesn't it work for me? But I just know like when I was trying to produce, like, and I never was producing it like very seriously because it was honestly very hard for me because I was just like, I'm not good at this, like doing like makeup tutorials and stuff, like not good. I just like, I knew it wasn't for me, but it was very hard to like walk away from like that very traditional like feminine style of content creation. And again, nothing wrong with it. Girls are slaying it. Girls are kicking ass at it, but definitely not what I kick butt at all.
No, real. I think I feel the same way. For me, I've never wanted to try and be in that space just because I knew, like, you just know sometimes in your gut, it's like, this isn't going to go well. And this is going to be not necessarily a waste of my time, but it is going to be a distraction from what I should be spending my time on. And I remember I tried. I remember I cold called one brand and they responded and they sent me some nice stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And it wasn't like I had to do a paid promo or anything. They were just like, hey, we just like how you approached us here. And I was like, oh, I could definitely try. And I was like, oh, like this is not the world for me. But the world in a corporate setting or the world in a connective setting where it's a little bit more free and it's not as boxed in for me personally, because if that's how I viewed it, my dream brands would be like the Pinterests of the world because there's so much innovative and creative just mentality and like energy around that I could do for early career talent, or that I could do for like the podcast, or what I could do for anybody. And just being able to, I could build out a proposal for that. I could build out ideas for that. But in terms of asking me, hey, can you promote this hair gel or this hairspray or this, I barely even, like when you said, I don't even really do makeup, I don't know how to do my hair, you're speaking to me. You're speaking to me because it's either it's not going to get done, or if it does get done, it's going to take a long time. And that's just something I can't spend my time on. I love being able to see other people do it, but I know that my purpose and my commitment, not just to myself, but to what I want to be able to give out to the world and what I want to be known for, looks a little bit different than that. And it may not be the traditional like corporate girly, but even still, it's a subset of just being successful within a workplace creatively and innovatively, and still not having to subscribe to a perspective or a box.
Yeah, and I honestly think like there's a lot of girls who like maybe they're in like the 10,000 to 100K like follower range who are like maybe still trying to niche down, and I see themselves like pushing towards this like beauty angle, this clean girl aesthetic. And then I see like the videos about like working out, or I see the videos about comedy, or I see the videos about bullet journaling or whatever their thing is. And you can just feel like how much more of a fit that is to them. And even like sometimes you can see in the numbers, like I'm not gonna drop her name, but like there's this one girl I know, she has like 50,000 followers on TikTok. She's like a really talented like producer, like she does like music production and stuff. And like I'll see her video about like come with me to the studio today, and it gets into like these like, you know, I don't know what she's doing, but like the technical engineering aspects of like music production and stuff. And it's very nerdy, very geeky. 2 days later, she'll book a collab with another beauty brand. And like I can feel her discomfort through the phone. And it's not that she doesn't look great doing it. It's not that it's not getting any likes at all, but it just, I can tell like it doesn't feel as natural to her. And I really wish like, and I'm sure, no, like I'm not, like I just follow her, like we're not locked in, but I wish someone would tell her like, girl, like it's okay to just be a nerd. Like if music production is your thing, if engineering is your thing, like please stick with it. Please stick with it. Like I mean, I could imagine her doing collabs with like Beats, with like Sony like podcast recording sets, with like going to different studios and doing tours and rating them. Like there's so many things she could be doing, but I feel like, and I honestly look at like the type of school she goes to, the other types of influencers she follows, and I just have this like feeling that she feels like pressured to do this type of content. And truth be told, like I'm not interested in her beauty routine. I am interested in what she does in that studio every day, because that's not really like, that is like an open niche in like kind of the social media world. And like, I mean, it's just so interesting. Like a lot of like, I will say I do feel like as a woman, I'm going to say this, obviously can't speak for every woman, but like I do just feel like there's a different level of pressure for women on social media, regardless of if you're trying to be a content creator, an influencer, or just a regular smegular girl. Like there's just something about it that like is kind of icky.
Yeah. And I can understand from a standpoint of, you have your niche, and who knows, maybe she might be trying to direct into another one and figure out her fit in that. But I definitely think the support of like the ideals that you just gave and maybe having a way to frame that or structure that may have been a better avenue to kind of direct and go down. And, we're all consistently learning, as, you and I are, of just figuring out what will work. And, hey, I need to talk to her and maybe follow her about what her music production and things look like, especially from like an audio realm. But yeah, I definitely think things look a little bit different in terms of the pressure for women. I mean, off social media, on social media, if we're being super real, but there's just something, I don't know what it is. I don't know what was placed in the water when society was being mixed around in a little pot or whatnot, but there are just so many different hoops that I feel like you have to go through as a woman just to sometimes even get the accurate perspective or perception. And it's like it's there. It's dead set there. It's implied there, but somehow things will end up as this weird workaround where other things are being implied that were never communicated, things that were never stated. If I'm telling you this is my routine in terms of like what I'm doing for like on a corporate standpoint, or if this is even my routine for a beauty standpoint, how are we getting to the point where we're comparing how I did something to another woman? Yeah, it just gets weird. It just gets weird with like weird notions and narratives. Hey, Notion, if you're listening to this, I did not mean you, by the way. But go talk to Lauren about a Notion partnership. It's just, it's a little strange, and it definitely has made me a little bit more hesitant. And I can understand also for maybe other people who are in early career why they could be hesitant too sometimes to even just be perceivable in a different way when you're just trying to put yourself out there and grow into this new shell of yourself. I just did another episode where we were talking about being balanced in your 20s, and I was doing it with another person who was in her 30s, and I was asking her like just kind of from all these different angles of pressures and societal things, and she also was a woman. And one thing within all of her experience, still with everything that she had going on, one thing she said was, if I could just go back to myself, I would literally just tell her to calm down and calm down. It's all going to be fine. And I think sometimes that's some of the noise that we have to use for ourselves too, in terms of trusting ourselves and our discernment, not the little voice that comes into our head when we think, maybe I shouldn't do something, or maybe I should blah, 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 when you're trying to advance yourself in something you love because of the perceivable opinions of others. But sometimes you just got to hit that send button. Sometimes you just got to tell yourself to get up out of bed, get that pen and paper and start writing something, and just pushing past that. Hopefully one day we'll get to a point where, you know, needed notions or unsolicited advice will cease to exist, or unsolicited comments. But for the time being, I don't think that's going anywhere soon. But how do you, especially in the marketing world and what you're trying to achieve, how do you block out the noise if you are facing any challenges or if you're facing any reservations within yourself?
Yeah, so I will say that comparison thing that you mentioned is probably one of the most like annoying parts about like social media world in general. Like even like you'll have like a TV show with two like prominent female characters and you'll see like a TikTok or a photo of them together. I can bet half the comments are gonna be like, I like this one better, this one's prettier. Da, 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 da. And it's very odd because in 99.9% of cases they're two like equally yoked actors, singers with their own individual careers that are literally in a show together, and like now everyone has to decide like who's better, and it's odd and it's very weird and it's a strange habit. Even like you'll see it like on all of like the Love Island like dating type shows. It's always like the two POC women are being like pinned against each other, who's prettier, who's has the better person, and it's very odd. Like comparison is a very odd thing, and you as a human like going online and choosing to compare people is, it's strange behavior. Pray for those people. But I think like one of the things that I've really had to like do within myself as like a personal habit is like mute people. like and like I absorb so much social media content, not only for like my own personal leisure but also for all my jobs. And I just realized like there were some people that like I love them in person, love them to death, or we don't really know each other but they seem cool, but like literally their content does not bring good feelings out of me for whatever reason. Like it doesn't make me feel good about myself when I see it. Like it just it isn't something I need to absorb on a daily basis. And sometimes you gotta hit that mute button. And it's not an unfollow, it's not saying you don't like them, and they honestly don't know because Instagram doesn't tell them. But I found like I really need to, especially when I'm looking at social media for like leisure, I really need to be in control of what I'm looking at to an extent, just because there's literally so much negativity out there, and just the way lives are presented on social media can be really fake that you're so deceived, and it's better to sometimes just mute some of that. Like I literally had a friend who like Monday her and her boyfriend broke up. Tuesday she sprained her ankle. Wednesday she failed a test. You know what that girl posted on Thursday? She posted herself at a bar, new dress, happy as can be. And I literally had watched her cry the last complete 72 hours. I don't even know how she made it to the bar. Her ankle was sprained. But like that's when I really started to realize like I'm in a way, like if I didn't know her, I would be deceived into thinking like things were like totally cool and fine. And I just started to realize that like one, mute, and two, lessen your consumption, because nothing good comes out of seeing that. Like nothing good. And the people whose content like I do consistently engage, look at, like I've really honestly vetted them. Like they're people who make me feel good about myself, who feel good about their self, so that also kind of like rubs off on me. They're living like lives I feel like I can relate to. And although like it's still social media, it's still going to be very clean, very like perfect, I at least can feel like the humanism from them. And like that's one thing I really had to do, is just like limit, lessen, mute. And I think like you can definitely go through stages like with some people. Like one of my friends, love her, but every weekend she's in a new city and I'm not there yet. I don't have the bands for that. And so sometimes I'm sitting in my little rinky dink dorm. She's in an Airbnb in New York. I said, girl, you got to get muted. Love you. I'll join you next month. But like, I can't sit and absorb this every weekend. And I'm like, oh, like, when is it going to be my turn to like be somewhere, everywhere, like all the time? Because it's just like, it's not good for me. And it's crazy because like she's living her dream life, but she's also like really upset sometimes about whatever's going on in her life. So it's just like, you just have to learn to sort through everything as well, and just take everything for like a grain of salt, because one time I posted pictures from 3 months ago. I wasn't in Barcelona anymore, guys. I was sitting in my bed. But y'all all think I was in Barcelona. Like, it's just like, and I honestly try and like limit the amount of ways I like quote unquote deceive people as much as possible. Like, I try really hard, like, not to post unless like I'm truly feeling happy. Like I just try and like I try to limit how many times I feel like I'm faking it for people. Like, even like I've never been a person who could do like day in the life content daily, because my day in the life on the daily is not something I want to share. One, and two, like I just feel like that type of things you publish when you're doing a day in the life is very much like my glamorous muffin from Starbucks, my full service lunch from Panera. Like, it's so unrealistic, and I never want to give people that perception of me.
And I understand that from the level of overconsumption because one thing that'll do, I know when I'm scrolling too long. I know when I've hit my limit, when things that probably really would not bother me start to bother me. And whether those are good things or those are bad things, but of just knowing like I've consumed too much, because then it's starting to go past this little like wall. It's almost like bread. So this is going to sound real weird, but it already started off real weird. But for me, I think of it like if I was like a little person or like a little ant or something, and I was floating on a piece of bread that was like in a sink or something, right? And I'm floating on top, or let's even use a sponge for the people who don't want to have a soggy image of bread in their head right now. But as a sponge starts to soak up water the longer that it's in that environment. And me as this little ant, I'm floating on top of it, but once it has enough water in it, the thing is going to sink. And that's when I know, when I feel like I'm drowning in it, it's my time to go. It's my time to let go for whatever reason it is. And that's a real thing. I think that's, honestly, I commend you for being vulnerable in that regard and really talking about people can get muted for a lot of different reasons. And it necessarily does not come from negative intent, but we each have our own things. If sometimes I'm just not there yet, or I'm just not wanting to go through that yet. And that's in regulating and understanding your body and how much energy you can take. For me, I'm a huge empath. I absorb people's energies like insanely. So sometimes I know I need to take a step back. Otherwise, I know this is going to affect me, and then I'm going to be mad because I'm like, why is this affecting me and my mind and my body in a different way that I necessarily can't regulate just because I feel so much for people in that way. Or for me, on the side of, I've never muted anybody that I can think of, but when I would see people in a space that I know I want to be in, for me personally, I know my jealousy just means it's motivation. And I know Jackie Aina said this, where she was like, if I know I'm jealous, I know I'm motivated. Not because I'm hating on the other person or I want to take that person's life. I want the same things they do. And there's no shame in saying that. It might take me a little bit longer, obviously, because they're already there and I'm looking at how I'm going to get there. But just reframing and reworking sometimes some things too, and reprocessing, it can do wonders, especially when you're learning how to unlearn something. And we're all currently doing that right now. Like, you and I were literally like in our early 20s figuring out what life is really about to look like for us and how we can set a stable foundation for ourselves, whatever that idea might look like, because it's different for everybody. But that's such a strong point of learning how to unlearn, relearn, reprocess, and then figure out how you focus that perspective into your daily life and what that's going to look like, especially for you as a person who's coming from a marketing standpoint. A lot of this stuff surrounds not your life, but it surrounds a lot of the things that you want to do and a lot of the circles that you're in beyond your own. And so I think from that perspective, and you talking about like that challenge of sometimes you just got to mute. I mean, that's real. And social media isn't always that, of this is just how it is. And when you're muting, are there other ways that you figure out how to recharge yourself that don't deal with social media? Like, what does your life look like when you're not having to work within that standpoint? What are some of your favorite things you do to recharge yourself and recover in that way?
So this is also like something that it took me a while to like grasp, but like you don't have to be good at your hobbies. And I think like that's something that like that's low key why like I feel like a lot of Americans don't have like happy hobbies is because like subconsciously you feel like you have to be good at them. And we're all not Vincent van Gogh. Like, we can't be good at painting, and not all of us can. So like when you're trying to enjoy like your mom's wine and sip class, like, or sip and paint class, like you can't enjoy it because you're like, why am I not good? And like that was one thing that like I really worked on probably in my like second year of college, like just having like actual hobbies that weren't related to monetization, social media, being good at them. Yeah. Yeah. Can't make money off it, can't monetize it, and low key like can't present it. So like I would like paint sometimes in like my school's like art studio type space. I would do like poetry writing. Those are like kind of my two favorite hobbies. And I literally do not enter, share, move, sell, picture any of it anymore. Just because it really does ruin it for you. Like even for like I'd say like 10 years I played an instrument. And
What did you play?
I played flute.
Oh, okay, woodwinds. I was a clarinet girly. Okay.
Okay, we're in the same area. We're in the same area. But like, maybe like so I started playing when I was in 4th grade. 4th, 5th, 6th grade, it's very hobby. Then like in 7th grade, 8th grade, you start auditioning for like your little honors bands, and like, it's still cute. It's still fun, like a little like weekend trip to Greensboro to like play with some other kids, like, okay. But then like you get into high school, and then it's like, oh, like I started doing like competitions for like scholarships and band. Like then I started saying like, oh, like do I want to try and like make a band in college and like maybe get like a band scholarship, because my dad had a band scholarship when he was in college. And I started to dislike it. Like I'd almost say I started to like hate it, just because like it wasn't even like just playing an instrument for it. Like now it had all of these like other things attached to it. And I think that was one thing that like, stop monetizing your hobbies. Like if you like crocheting, girl, you don't have to sell hats. You can just crochet. Like, and I think a lot of people get confused between like a leisure activity and a future business. It everything doesn't have to be a future business, and I love some entrepreneurship, but everything does not have to be a future business. And just like you have to like establish like boundaries with yourself of, this is a hobby I enjoy. I'm not competing, I'm not comparing, and I'm not presenting it. That it's just got to be something I enjoy. Like when I studied abroad in London, I actually took like sketching classes at an art studio, and I sucked. No. Like I'm talking like they would have like people sit and you would draw them.
I'm trying so hard not to laugh at you. I'm so sorry.
No, and you couldn't tell me nothing. Like every Wednesday at 7:30, I was leaving my flat in London to walk to this art class in downtown. Like I had like London version of Five Below, like sketch pencils, eraser was low-key non-existent. 8.5 by 11 paper, and I was showing up to that class. Like, and these are people who are like, they're trying to make shit shake. Like they're trying to really be like true artists and stuff. And I was just there for fun. And like it was honestly nice because one, like a lot of them were like helping me like learn like the basics, and they were getting to teach, and it was like a good throwback moment for me. But it's also really nice like because they're all competing with each other, because they want their picture hung up at the art studio, so like all the investors that can come in can maybe see them and like spot. And I'm just like, well, don't hang my crap up. Do not hang my crap up. Y'all will lose your investors. Please save yourself. Like, and it was honestly like, it was one of like the best extracurricular activities I've ever done. I also did like club gymnastics for a semester when I was in my freshman year. Not because, I mean, yes, I did gymnastics when I was 5. Was I ever good then? No. Am I good now? No. But like it was actually really fun to like learn to do a cartwheel, learn to do a round off, learn to do like beam tricks, learn to do bar tricks. And I literally said like, oh, I want to compete like my senior year in like a level 1 competition with other like level 1 people, like just for fun. But outside of that, I like, please don't record me, please don't film me. Like, I don't want this anywhere. I don't want to post like clocked into my gymnastics session, but like, I don't want that. Like, I just want my little space and my little hobby, and I just want to fall on the cheese mat, and that's just really it.
No, yeah, you're saying I want to be off the grid. And oh my gosh, when you were talking about those investors and them hanging up, like, you were in the mindset of my stuff isn't even getting hung up on the fridge at home. Like, it's just let me vibe, let me enjoy it. We don't have to critique, we don't have to comment. I already know. Like, and even if I didn't know, I'm just still doing it for a vibe. Like, it's fine. And I think your perspective on a lot of the things that we talked about is so valuable within the space that you're going in, because you hold a lot of understanding of nuance with everything and how that can really hold an audience and how that can make an audience, how that can maintain an audience, how you can create connections in that way of just being real and just being genuine and really just fostering something that's organic, and how you're doing it from the cool ways, but also like the not so cool ways, the fun ways, but the maybe those are deemed boring, but I don't care because I like those ways and those were the things that I like to do. And speaking on that hobby part, coming from a recovering, or I say very recovering perfectionist, I think that's something that needs to be said, right? Especially for a lot of it's so ironic. A lot of the content that we end up enjoying is because it feels like it's not perfect. It feels like it's genuine. It feels like something that is like, it's not something that we're trying to achieve. It's so weird, the parallels and the dynamics that we have with ourselves, not necessarily on like a parasocial relationship level. That might be the case for some people, but from the lens of like a lot of the things that you enjoy, you don't hold yourself to those same standards like inherently or intuitively, and it just sucks sometimes. And when you really start recognizing that, I feel like true shifts happen. And it starts with the little things like your hobbies, and then it grows and it gets bigger, and then to some point like it just becomes too much where you stop it. And I think that's a huge thing that also goes into success as well, and fear. So if you are afraid of doing something and going after your goals, at some point that fear of not doing whatever you were going to do is going to outweigh the fear of whatever's been holding you back for the longest time. And I want to know, have you ever felt moments like that of feeling like things would hold you back from what you're doing now? Or did you just say, no, I never had that?
No, I would definitely say there were things, especially early in college, that did really, really hold me back. Like, although I was like competent in to an extent in like my academic extracurricular abilities, like obviously I had gotten into college, like I was like, oh, okay, like I can do some stuff. There were times where I did feel like an imposter at my school. Like, I just like, especially when it came to like my STEM classes, like I just felt like I was struggling more than like the people who were posting on TikTok about struggling. Like, they were getting 70s, I was getting numbers that like I can't name on this. And I just was like, oh wow. And like for a while that really did like tank my confidence in terms of like applying to internships, because I had a low GPA for a while, or like taking other challenging classes, because all I could remember was like that one chemistry class like that I like could not get through. And so I do feel like that like held me back for a while, but I also do feel like there were people in my life that held me back, and I never want to say like I feel like it was purposeful or even like no malice intent, but the way they perceived me and the way they saw me and the role they wanted me to play in their life prevented me from playing the role that I was really destined to play in my life. And I think that's something that like is very hard to navigate when you're like late teens, early 20s, just because you want to make all these people happy. You want the platonic relationships, the romantic relationships, the familial relationships, like you want all of those things. And part of those relationships is you want people to be happy with you. But sometimes like what people want from you is one, something you cannot give, and something you should not be giving. And that was something I really struggle with, especially like my first 2 years of college, because I felt like I was just I don't even want to say floating, like kind of, but also just like I was molding myself to fit into very tight molds and really limiting like the stuff I was doing because I guess I felt like if I did certain things, it would really push me outside of the mold in which a lot of people knew me traditionally, and that like it wasn't, I don't know, it just made me super uncomfortable.
But did those things make you happy? Like those things that you were trying to do, were those things that were making you happy that would make other people upset? Or
Yes. The vast majority of them were things that, yes, would make me a happier person, were things I wanted to do. And like, I just felt like and like, this is something like I feel like people don't talk about, but it's really, really hard to like, if you kind of grow up with people who come to college with you, or like, even like, you just meet these people like your freshman year, first semester, and they kind of stick around with you. But then you kind of get to the point where you're growing and changing in a way that you're no longer compatible with them. It's really hard to leave that behind. And for me, I'm not the best at leaving. Like, I was just like you don't, because I hate to disappoint people. Like, I hate people to be upset with me, and I hate to fail people's expectations. But some people's expectations aren't really like who I plan to be or what I plan to be. And once I figured that out, I was like kind of in like a weird like middle ground where I was like, do I keep trying to like maintain this relationship? Like, this isn't really like me at all anymore, and like it's time to depart. And that was something that like I felt like kind of held me back. And even like I think like this changed like definitely my second semester sophomore year. I honestly got friends who were supportive of like my dreams for myself. And I think that's something that's like, people can always be supportive. A lot of people are great supports, like people, but it's different when people are just supportive and when people are supportive of you and what you want from your life. Those are two very different things. And that was like one thing I learned. Like, a lot of my friends, like, they were always going to clap for me no matter what. They would also clap for me though when I was doing things that really weren't in line with my character and my future dreams. And although like they're great, like they're still showing support, there's a big difference between a friend who they're going to put their hands together. They're going to be like, "Oh girl, that's not it. You got to cut that out." Like, because it's not in line with like who I actually am and like who I want to be. And I feel like once I started to like really figure out the friends who are like, still great people, but they aren't really going to make me a better person, and their expectations for me are low-key low. Like, they're not going to hold me to that level of greatness. And like, versus the friends who are like, if I don't go to class for a week, like they're knocking on my door like, "Girl, what the heck? Get up. Like, stand up, wake up, let's go." Like, those are very two different types of friendships. And I really have learned to like lean into my friends who really do push me to be what, not only like the dreams that I've put out for them, like, and I've told them like, I want to do this, I want to be this. They hold me accountable to those dreams, which is like two totally different types of friendship. And I really say like that's the difference between like a girl friendship and a woman friendship. Like, a girl friendship, it's all kikis, it's all giggles, it's all claps, it's very light, it's very airy, it's very warm. But like a woman friendship, like a friendship between two women who they're grown or they're trying to get grown, it's very different. And that was like one thing that I like really learned like towards the end of my sophomore year, who was like pushing me to be the version of myself that I've been saying, I want to do all this. They were like, "Girl, you can't just yap. You can't just say you want a business. Like, have you applied for a grant? Like, have you put the LLC behind that?" Like,
no, yeah, like you have to have relationships that even when they're not at their best, or one person isn't at their best, there's someone that can be able to pick you up. And it's not just "Oh, you're not good? Okay, well, I'm good, so I'm gonna go over here." But you have those friends that are like, "She's not good. What are we gonna do to help her get good?" And then it's the same way, like it's a two-way street. It's not like a one-way, or it's not something that's just transactional. It's something that's transformational, and you build on that versus like, "Hey girl, you spot me for lunch, I'll walk you to that class that you don't like," which those are fine, but like in evolving past that point at some point in your life, because you'll need those, and those are the things that lay your foundation. And I feel like you've talked so much about your experience and your perspectives and your thoughts of how those experiences end up where you're in the mindset that you're in now? And how do you feel like your experiences have translated into how you carry yourself professionally?
Yeah, I think I've definitely found one like really good role models now, not just people who are like, oh, they're 10-15 years into their career, but people who are also like my age. Like that's one thing I feel like about mentorship, role models, like people don't talk about, like you also need people like your age that you look up to in a way, like because yeah, especially in the college setting, like there's just some people who like genuinely, like no matter the peer pressure, the situationship, they gonna stand on their beliefs. And I say I'm there 80% of the time. I'm trying to get that other 20%. But like there's people like, who are my age who like really stand on their stuff. And like that's something I really like admire from them. And I think like having people you can look up to in like your still like age group has really like made me a better person, I would say. Like shout out Barbara Joy Tillman. Like drop her whole name. But like she's one of those people who like genuinely, I don't think I've seen her not stand on her like moral values yet. Like, and I'm sure the slip up will happen one day, but the amount of situations I've seen her do it that a lot of people wouldn't have done it in is like low key insane. Like I have no idea how she does it. And it's like very cool to like have someone like that so close to my life that like I'm like, dang, like I can't tell her I'm not standing on business. Like she gonna kill me. Like I can't tell her this. And it just like really, and like even when I do tell her, like, girl, I slipped up. Like she's just like, it's okay, but like let's get back on track. Like let's be serious. And I'm like, yeah, let's be serious this week. Like let me go to class again. So like that's like one thing I feel like has been like super important. And they've also like some of my friends have given me like a lot more confidence. And again, I think like this is like the big difference between like friendships like among girls and friendships among like true grown-up women. Like, like your girlfriends, like they tell you like, oh girl, like you look cute, like I like this outfit, like the boy you're talking to is cute. Like that's like the type of stuff you get. But like real like grown women or people who are trying to get there soon are like, oh, like I like that question like you asked in class today, like that was actually like sparked a good conversation. Or oh, like I saw you're doing like this little part-time job with them, like that's actually really good for your like career and development. Or oh, like I saw like on like the house calendar that you're going to therapy next week, good on you. Like maybe I'm gonna like try and reconnect with my therapist. And like there's just such a big difference between like the way your friends build you up that like I think has also made me like a lot more confident of a person, just having like different people who like are also like, obviously, you always build yourself up, but like having like a good group of people around you who are also building you up.
Yeah, people who can meet your different needs and you can meet their needs too. Like it's again like a transformational two-way street, but sometimes you need help. Like, and that's okay. Like you may not want to ask for it sometimes, but sometimes you really do need the help. And everybody needs the help of just helping them understand themselves sometimes when it's a little hard, or sometimes when you just don't know yourself at the moment, or sometimes like there's different situations in life, everybody. I feel like we know this, but I'm just having your community around you that can help be there for you, and you have those perspectives and they're the people who help you with your needs. I mean, that's something huge. And I really just want to take the time to really thank you so much for everything that you've given us. And I want to make sure I ask this because I think it's so important. But for any professionals or anybody listening to this right now that is in that marketing space, in that PR space, in that public policy space, what do you need from them? How can they help you as you continue within your career?
I honestly like, if I think about like in 10 years, like me being a social media manager or like me being a talent manager, I just hope we all get more authentic. Like that's like the thing I want to see ultimately. Like one day I want to go on Instagram and it's just like people talking about the things that one actually matter in their lives and things that actually affect them and things that are real for them. Like, and again, if that's beauty, keep it up. I can't do makeup, so I'm watching the tutorial. But if that's, being a math major, if that's losing weight after like kind of a period of falling off of working out, if that's learning how to cook, like I just want to hear more from who people actually are and not like what they feel they have to present themselves as. Like, that's really what I want. And just like, it may never happen, but I'd love to see social media just be like a better, more positive space. And I'd love to see us just hold people more accountable for like some of the things they say online, and just kind of reclaim that space as like, you know, when you think of like Pinterest like 5 years ago, like I don't even think you could like and comment on Pinterest for a really long time. Like just those vibes. I would love to see that.
More authentic, more positive, more good energy and vibes. Social media definitely is a different beast, but hopefully we'll get there. And I'm speaking of getting there, I'm so happy again that you were able to come here and really talk about all of your perspectives and give us a deeper insight into just so many things today, down from womanhood and transformational relationships, how you show up for yourself, but how different that is for how you show up for other people in terms of marketing. What are some of your leading philosophies and how you carry yourself, and how you've grown like from some of the things that you've been through? I think all of that information has been something that's so instrumental and will be so freeing and releasing for a lot of people, of just talking about the good and the bad of every side of the coin. And I appreciate you just sharing your experiences and being so vulnerable with us, but also talking about your career and how you've developed not just as a professional, but as a person.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I'm so glad to kind of get to connect with your community and just continue to kind of build like space here, and just a space in the early career like world, or just, you know, make space for conversations and make space for people's feelings. So thank you for having me.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Intentional Intern podcast. We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a boost of motivation to take on your career journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share it with your network. Connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback fuels our next great episode. Until next time, stay intentional, keep growing, and keep shining bright. See you in the next episode.